Has Keir Starmer surrendered? Is he an appeaser, a modern-day Chamberlain? There are various voices who are something close to apoplectic with rage that Keir Starmer has finished off the negotiations started by the last government that sought to comply with the rulings of a number of international courts that said that Britain had not got a right to claim sovereignty of the archipelago of the Chagos Islands. In 2021, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea ruled that Mauritius is sovereign over the Chagos Archipelago. In 2019, the International Court of Justice said the detachment of the Chagos Archipelago in 1965 from Mauritius had not been based on free and genuine expression of the people concerned. They say this continued administration constitutes a wrongful act. The UK has an obligation to bring to an end its administration of the Chagos Archipelago as rapidly as possible, and that all member states must cooperate with the United Nations to complete the decolonisation of Mauritius. But on the island of Diego Garcia sits a joint UK-US military base where some pretty secret squirrel stuff goes on, I'm told, and provides the United Kingdom with a very strategically important military asset in the Indian Ocean. The argument is that by ceding sovereignty of the islands, Keir Starmer has put the base on Diego Garcia at risk, particularly given Mauritius is sympathetic and financially reliant upon the Chinese Communist Party. The Times reports today that Keir Starmer was warned by the US about ceding sovereignty amid fears the Chinese could establish listening posts on the islands. So, was this the wrong decision? Mark Francois is the former Armed Forces Minister who is Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. Thank you very much for coming on the programme, Mr Francois. What's wrong with this decision as you see it?
Yes, it was exactly the wrong decision. And the judgment of the International Court of Justice that you cited is advisory. It is not legally binding in any way in international law. So it didn't force the government to do anything. This is a very dangerous decision. It's strategic madness because, as you rightly said, the Chinese have growing influence over the government of Mauritius. They've invested nearly $1 billion there in recent years. So either A, it's possible that over time they would persuade the government of Mauritius to get rid of that base, or B, they allow the Chinese to build one virtually next door, which would effectively negate the use of that installation. So in strategic terms, this is absolute madness. And it's even worse that this was slipped out whilst Parliament was not sitting, so that MPs from whichever party were unable to question the government on why they were doing this. It's been presented as a fait accompli behind the back of Parliament and also behind the backs of the Chagossians, who I saw the MP that represents Crawley on Newsnight last night. That's where most of those Chagossian expats now live. And he was pretty furious that they hadn't even been consulted by the Labour government. So overall, it's a complete disaster. And it just shows you how utterly strategically inept this new government are. They can't get winter fuel right. They can't get foreign policy right either. It's a shambles.
If the judgment in 2019 was advisory and therefore didn't require anything of the government, why did the last Conservative government enter into negotiations about handing the islands back?
Well, there had been discussions about this for years between the Mauritians and the Foreign
Why did the
Office.
Conservative government enter into discussions finished off by the Labour Party? There were already discussions for years about handing back.
As you said it had been going on for years. But when a proposal, and this is my understanding of what happened, when a proposal came from the Foreign Office under the Conservatives that we should agree this deal, the Ministry of Defence, Grant Shapps was the Defence Secretary. I was on the Defence Committee. I remember talking to Grant about it. The MOD vetoed it within government for all the strategic reasons that I've just given and some more besides. So the Conservatives did have discussions, but we never went ahead with the deal because it was strategically so dangerous. So the MOD, all credit to Grant Shapps, vetoed it. We never did the deal. In come Labour, and they do the deal within 3 months.
The deal?
Why? Because let's just say David Lammy is not exactly a strategic genius.
But the deal obviously involves discussions about the UK-US base on Diego Garcia. And in the text of the deal, it says that the United Kingdom will be authorised to exercise with respect to Diego Garcia the sovereign rights and authorities of Mauritius required to ensure the continued operation of the base well into the next century. The initial lease is 99 years. So what's the issue?
Where does it say, and the Chinese can't build one next door? Where does it say that?
Well, I guess that would be up to the Chinese then, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be up to the Mauritians, but if the Chinese continue to stuff their mouths with gold, it's worrying. And also, we know that Keir Starmer's a great mate of Lord Ali, who has connections in Syria. As he's told the House of Lords, he's almost boasted about having meetings with President Assad. And according to the Guido Fawkes website, I'm only quoting it, according to Guido, this is, Philip Sands, KC, who's been effectively the main legal advisor to the Mauritians for many years, is a close friend, Guido's phrase, not mine, of Sir Keir Starmer. Now, why are so many decisions being taken so quickly by Sir Keir Starmer? And if Parliament had been sitting, we could have asked these questions. But why did they sneak this out when Parliament wasn't sitting, bearing in mind that the House of Commons is due to return on Monday? What on earth is going on?
I'll bring you back to the question about the base, which is the big one. I mean, unless you think that the entire archipelago should be under British control because that's the way it's been for the last 50-odd years. The main issue is the base, and the base is going to be...
remain under British control. I think it's bonkers that we are now going to have to lease back that base. We're going to have to pay the Mauritians a rent for it. I'd like to know which government department is going to pay the rent. Is it the MOD or the FCDO? How much is the rent? What are we going to have to pay to rent back what was effectively ours in the first place? And it's even worse than that, because on the back of this, surprise, surprise, the president of Argentina now has reasserted their claim to the Falklands. And when Keir Starmer was asked about that today, he was asked just to rule out any Argentinian claim to the Falklands. He ducked it. He didn't even do that. We lost hundreds of servicemen winning back the Falkland Islands. What's a Falkland Islands veteran going to make of that? So they've opened Pandora's box here, and now we'll have Spain and Gibraltar. Starmer does not know what he's doing from one day to the next. We have elected a far more left-wing prime minister than this country ever bargained for. And with every day that passes, that becomes more evident. A man who won't even defend the Falklands.
And yet, the base is securely British for the next at least 99 years.
Unless the Mauritians change their mind.
No, because that's the agreement we've entered into.
The agreement.
Well, then we'd have to negotiate that, wouldn't we? They could rip up
then it would be too late.
It takes two parties to negotiate an agreement. They could rip it up, but the agreement would still stand.
They've signed an agreement now, which Parliament, by the way, has not yet approved. I'm supporting Robert Jenrick in the leadership. I declare my interest. But Robert yesterday quite rightly said that the opposition, we have what's called an opposition day on Tuesday, where we can choose the debate subject, we can choose the motion. I think Robert's right. We, the Conservatives, should now use that opportunity on Tuesday to hold the government to account, to answer all these very difficult questions about who is and isn't a friend of Starmer's, how much money is this going to cost, how legally binding is it really, and then we should vote on it. And if Labour are determined to push this through, even though it is strategic madness, and the Pentagon have objected to it, Biden may not have done, but the Pentagon have, why on earth should they do this without Parliament even being able to vote on it?
Thanks for coming on the programme. Mark Francois, former Armed Forces Minister, Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford.